I never imagined that the happiest day of my life, the day of my return, would turn into the beginning of my own personal hell. I stepped off the bus at the corner of Palm Avenue. My old boots, caked with dry mud from the last construction site in Texas, felt heavy as lead, but my heart felt light, beating like a teenage boy in love. 20 years, 20 damn years dreaming of this moment. I adjusted my worn-out cap. I dusted off my denim jacket, the one that had more patches than original fabric, and I walked toward the house that I paid for with every drop of my sweat. I did not want to arrive in a limousine, or with my Italian suits, or escorted by my bodyguards. No, I wanted my children to hug me, to hug Robert, their father, the gardener, the bricklayer. I wanted to know if they still loved me for who I am, and not for the millions I now have in the bank. What a fool I was. What a delusional old man. When I reached number 405, I stopped dead in my tracks. I felt the air escape my lungs, as if someone had punched me right in the gut. The mansion was beautiful, freshly painted in bone white. Imposing. There were luxury cars parked all along the block. Mercedes, BMWs, the latest SUVs, people dressed in black holding glasses of champagne, walking in and out. But what froze my blood was not the luxury, but what was hanging over the main gate. A giant tarp, a 10-foot banner with my photograph, an old photo from when I was young and strong, surrounded by black ribbons and golden letters that read, "In loving memory of our father, Robert Sterling, 1965 to 2020. 5 years since your departure, but your legacy lives on." I rubbed my eyes. Once. Twice. Am I crazy? Did I die on the bus and not realize it? I pinched my arm. It hurt. I'm alive. Thank God. I'm alive. Then what the hell is this? I moved like a sleepwalker toward the entrance. Violin music played softly from the garden. It smelled of expensive food, French perfume, and hypocrisy. Hey, hold it right there. A security guard, a 6-foot gorilla in a cheap suit, blocked my path. Where do you think you're going, Gramps? This is a private event. The service entrance is through the alley and we are not giving out handouts today. No, I am not here to ask for charity, I stammered, my voice trembling with confusion. I am Robert. That is my house. That, I pointed to the banner with a shaking finger. That man in the photo is me. The guard let out a dry laugh. Yeah, right. And I am the president. Get lost, you old drunk, before I kick you out. At that moment, the gate opened, and I saw him. Michael, my eldest son, my boy. He was no longer the skinny kid I left crying at the airport. Now he was a man, wearing a suit that cost more than I made in a year when I first arrived up north. He had a glass of red wine in his hand and was laughing with some guests. Michael, I screamed, with my soul in my throat. Son, it is me. It is your dad. Michael turned around. His smile vanished instantly. There was no surprise in his eyes. There was no joy in seeing a resurrected father. There was annoyance. There was disgust, as if he had seen a cockroach on his dinner plate. He walked toward me, not to hug me, but to make sure the guests did not hear. What are you doing here? He whispered with a voice so cold it froze my bones. I told you to stay over there. What do you mean, what am I doing here? My eyes filled with tears. Son! I read the sign. Why do they say I'm dead? I sent you money last week. I texted you yesterday. Michael looked around, nervous. He leaned in closer, invading my personal space, smelling of expensive alcohol. Shut your mouth, you stupid old man, he hissed between his teeth. To the world you died 5 years ago. We already collected the insurance. We already did the paperwork. If you open your mouth and say who you are, you sink us all. Do you understand? You are dead. Get out of my party, or I swear you will wish you were dead for real. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel, William's Revenge Stories, and tell us where you're listening from in the comments below. The impact of his words was worse than any accident I had suffered on the construction site. I stood petrified, staring at my own blood, at my firstborn, speaking to me with the hatred of a mortal enemy. The insurance? I asked with a broken voice. You killed me. For money? Michael, I have sent you thousands of dollars every month. Everything I have is for you guys. It is crumbs. He interrupted me without raising his voice, but with contained fury. What you send is not enough for the lifestyle we deserve. Sarah and I are high society people now, Dad. We cannot have a gardener father, an embarrassing wetback showing up here with his boots full of manure. You are worth more to us dead than alive. People pity us. They donate to our foundation. It is perfect. I tried to touch his shoulder, an instinctive fatherly gesture. Son, please, look at me. It is me, the one who taught you to ride a bike, the one who bandaged your scraped knees. Look me in the eyes. Michael slapped my hand away violently, brushing my calloused hand off his impeccable jacket. Do not touch me, he shouted, drawing the attention of some nearby guests. Guard, get this homeless man out of here. He is bothering my guests. But he is your father, I screamed, no longer caring who heard. My father was a great man who died building skyscrapers in New York, said Michael loudly, acting for his audience, with a falseness that made me nauseous. You're just a crazy old man looking to take advantage of someone else's pain. Get out. He pushed me. My legs, tired from the trip and from age, failed. I fell to my knees on the cement sidewalk. The physical pain was sharp, but the pain in my soul... Oh my God, that has no name. From the ground I looked up. I saw people murmuring, looking at me with contempt. Poor Michael, they said. What a lack of respect for that bum to come on such a sacred day. I was the intruder at my own funeral. I was the villain in the story my children had invented. While I was there, kneeling, looking at my scraped hands against the concrete, the memories hit me like a tidal wave. These hands, damn it. These hands were not always those of a rich old man. 20 years ago, when I left, these hands were soft. I said goodbye to them at this very door. My wife had just died of cancer, and I was broke. I promised them, I'm going to come back, and I'm going to build you a castle. You will never lack for anything. I crossed the Arizona desert, walking 3 days without water. I hid from immigration under bridges full of rats. I arrived in Texas without speaking a word of English and with $5 in my pocket. I started sweeping floors at construction sites. I ate expired bread that supermarkets threw away just to save every penny and send it back to Mexico. I slept 4 hours. I worked 20. I worked from sun up to sundown until my skin tanned like leather and my back bent permanently. But I had a gift for plants and for design. With these calloused hands, I started fixing gardens on weekends. One client recommended me to another. I saved. I bought my first beat-up truck. Then I hired a helper. Then 10. 20 years later, Robert Landscaping and Construction is one of the biggest companies in San Antonio. I have government contracts. I have 50 trucks. I have 200 employees who call me Mr. Sterling, with respect. I have a bank account with more zeros than Michael could count, but I never told them. What an idiot I was. I wanted to teach them a lesson in humility. I wanted them to value the effort. When they called, I always answered, regardless of whether I was in a meeting with architects or having dinner with the mayor. How are my children? I would ask them. Fine, Dad. We need money for tuition. We need money for the car. Of course, son. It is on the way. They never asked me. How are you, Dad? Does your back hurt? Did you eat yet? They only asked. And I, blind with love, gave. Even when I wanted to learn how to video call, Michael always had an excuse. The Wi-Fi in town is down, Dad. My camera broke. Grandma is asleep. Do not wake her up. Grandma. My mother. The thought shook me and brought me back to the present. I stood up, wobbling. I wiped the blood from my knee. The fury was beginning to replace the sadness. If I was dead, what had happened to my mother? At that moment, she came out. Sarah, my princess. The little girl whose hair I used to brush before school. Now she was a stunning woman, wrapped in a tight black dress, covered in jewels, jewels that I am sure I paid for. Upon seeing me, there was no surprise, only a grimace of disgust, as if she had smelled sour milk. She took a bottle of perfume from her purse and sprayed the air between us. "Oh, for God's sake, that smell?" she said, wrinkling her nose. "Michael, why is this guy still here? He is going to scare away the investors." "Sarah," I said, ignoring her insult. My voice sounded hoarse. "Daughter, look at me. It is Dad. I do not have a dad. My dad is a hero who died." She repeated the script, crossing her arms. "Go ask for money somewhere else." I took a step forward. "I do not want your money. I have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes, you silly girl. But that does not matter now. I want to see my mother. I want to see Grandma Rose." Sarah and Michael exchanged a quick glance, a look of complicity and nervousness. "Grandma?" Sarah let out a nervous little laugh. "Grandma is... she is resting." "Where?" I demanded. "Last month, you sent me a photo of her holding the daily newspaper. She looked tired." "Where is she?" "We put her in a nursing home." Michael intervened quickly, stepping in front of his sister, the best in the city. 5 stars. The Angels' residence. It has nurses 24 hours a day. Jacuzzi, gourmet food. She is better off than we are." "A nursing home?" I felt a knot in my stomach. My mother hated hospitals. I sent $2,000 extra every month just so she could have nurses here, in her house. "Why did you move her out?" "Because she was in the way." "I mean because she needed specialized care." Sarah corrected herself, but the slip-up was evident. "Besides, she does not receive visitors, and certainly not the people looking like that. Imagine, you arrive smelling like sweat and dirt. You will kill her from the fright." I looked them in the eyes. I saw their pupils dilated. I saw how Sarah played nervously with her pearl necklace. They were lying. I have negotiated with real estate sharks in Texas. I know when someone is trying to sell me smoke. "You're lying," I said, lowering my voice. "She is not in any 5-star nursing home. I see it in your eyes. Tell me where my mother is, or I swear to God I will tear this fence down with my own hands." The threat seemed to break Michael's patience. It was no longer just annoyance. It was fear that I would discover something else. "I have had enough," Michael shouted. "Security! Get this crazy man off me. Teach him a lesson so he does not come back." The 2 security guerrillas approached, cracking their knuckles. I am a strong man. Hard work keeps me in shape. But I am 60 years old, and they were 2 mountains of young muscle. "Do not touch my father," I tried to scream. But the first blow knocked the wind out of me. A heavy fist slammed into my ribs. I heard a dry crack. The pain blinded me momentarily. "This is private property," one of the guards shouted as he kicked me in the shin. I fell to the ground, this time face first, straight into a mud puddle that had formed next to the sidewalk from the rain that was starting to fall. The cold mud got into my mouth, my nose, my clothes, my humble man costume. Now it was soaked and dirty for real. From the ground, spitting dirt and blood, I looked up. I saw Michael and Sarah in the doorway of the gate, under the roof, dry and safe. Sarah covered her mouth, but she did not look horrified. She looked worried about whether the scandal had ruined the party. Michael was smiling, a cruel smile of triumph. "Look at you," said Michael, pointing at me with his glass. "That is where you belong, in the trash." He took a step closer without leaving the property, and looked at me with infinite contempt. "Listen to me closely, old man. If you show up again, if you ask about Grandma again, or if you try to say you are Robert Sterling, I swear the police will find drugs in your pockets, and you will rot in jail for identity theft. Here, the one with the money and the power, is me. You are a nobody, a ghost, and ghosts do not speak." He turned around. "Close the gate," he ordered. The black iron gate, the one I designed with my own hands, drawing on a napkin 20 years ago, closed slowly. The screech of the metal sounded like the bolt of a tomb. I stayed there, lying in the rain with my ribs burning and my heart broken into pieces. The rain washed the blood from my lip, but it could not wash the shame. Shame for having raised these monsters. Shame for having been so blind. But as I dragged myself toward the wall to try to stand up, something changed inside me. The physical pain was still there, but the emotional pain began to harden, turning into something cold and sharp. Like steel, I looked at my mud-filled hands. "Very well, Michael," I whispered to nothing while the rain mixed with my tears. "You want to play that I am a nobody? You want to play that I am dead?" I clenched my fist, feeling the strength I still had, the strength that built an empire from nothing. "Then get ready, my son, because the dead have no mercy, and I am going to find out where you have my mother, even if I have to burn the whole world down to find her." I stood up, wobbling, limping. I did not go to the bus stop. I walked toward the back of the subdivision, toward the service alley. I knew I would find answers there. I knew that Martha, the old maid, always fed the cats by the back door at this hour. The hunt had just begun. I got up from the mud like a wounded animal. The rain fell harder now, washing the blood from my split lip. But the cold I felt did not come from the weather. It came from knowing that my own children had beaten me. I touched my ribs. They hurt when I breathed, probably a fracture. But that pain was a caress compared to the anguish pressing on my chest, thinking about my mother. I did not go to the bus stop. I could not leave. I walked limping, sticking to the exterior wall of the subdivision, hiding among the decorative bushes so the guards would not see me. I knew this place better than anyone. I myself had designed the original blueprints of this house 2 decades ago, dreaming of every brick. I knew there was a narrow alley in the back, a service corridor where they took out the trash, and where the employees entered. The contrast was insulting. Out front, lights, classical music, and luxury cars. In the back, overflowing dumpsters, the smell of waste and darkness. Upon reaching the back gate, I saw a hunched figure. It was an old woman wearing a worn apron, emptying a plate of leftovers for some stray cats. My heart skipped a beat. "Martha?" I whispered with a hoarse voice. The woman jumped and dropped the plate. She squinted in the darkness, trying to see who the homeless man calling her was. "Go away," she said with a trembling voice. "I do not have any money. If Master Michael sees you here, he is going to punish us both." I stepped into the dim light of the street lamp. I took off my soak cap and let her see my face. "Martha, it is me, Robert." The old maid brought her hands to her mouth, stifling a scream. Her eyes filled with instant tears. She had worked for us since Michael was a baby. I paid for her arthritis medicine in secret from the States. "Holy Mother of God," she whispered, crossing herself, "Mr. Robert, it is a miracle. It is a ghost." "I am not a ghost, Martha. I am alive," I said, gripping the fence so I wouldn't fall. "But they say I am dead." Martha came closer to the fence, touching my hands through the cold bars. Her hands were as calloused as mine. "Oh, boss, they told us you died in an accident at the construction site." Young Michael showed us the death certificate. They held a mass. "It is a lie, Martha." "It is all a lie," I interrupted her, the urgency burning my throat. "But that does not matter now. Tell me the truth. Where is my mother?" "They told me she is at the Angel's residence, in a 5-star place." Martha's expression changed. Fear and shame flooded her face. She looked down. "No, boss. There is no residence." I felt the ground open up beneath my feet. "Where is she, Martha? Tell me." She pointed with a trembling finger toward the back of the garden. Beyond the lit-up pool, beyond the luxury barbecue area, she pointed toward a dark area, full of weeds, where we used to keep gardening tools and raise some chickens. "They have her there, boss," sobbed Martha. "In the old chicken coop. Young Michael says that Grandma smells bad, that she scares the guests, that she wets herself. They took her out of her room 3 years ago." "In the chicken coop?" I repeated, unable to process the monstrosity. "Like an animal?" "I bring her food in secret when I can. But they sometimes do not feed her for 2 days if she does not cooperate for the photos." I did not wait to hear any more. The fury gave me a strength I did not know I had. I climbed the service fence, ignoring the stabbing pain in my ribs, and dropped to the other side. I did not care if they saw me. I was going to kill someone tonight. I walked among the shadows of the garden that I had paid for. In the distance I heard the laughter of the party, the clinking of crystal glasses, a toast to the memory of my father. I heard Michael's voice over a microphone. That voice churned my stomach. I entered the neglected part of the grounds. Here there was no English grass or exotic flowers. There were nettles, mud, and accumulated trash. And there it was, the old shed made of rusted tin sheets, the chicken coop. The smell hit me before I arrived. An unbearable stench of humidity, old urine and rot. I felt like vomiting, not from the disgust, but from the indignation. My mother, the woman who gave me life, the queen of my heart. Here? Mom? I called softly, pushing the rotten wooden door that hung by a single hinge. The interior was in gloom, illuminated only by the moonlight filtering through holes in the roof. Raindrops fell rhythmically on the dirt floor, and then I saw her. In a corner, on a filthy mattress that looked like it was taken from a dumpster, was a small bundle. She was wrapped in ragged gray blankets. Upon hearing my voice, the bundle moved with fear. Shrinking against the wall, I approached slowly, my heart beating in my ears like a war drum. Mom, it is me. It is Robert. The figure turned her head. It was her. But at the same time, it wasn't. My mother, Grandma Rose, had always been a robust woman, full of life. What was in front of me was a skeleton covered in pale, transparent skin. Her eyes, once bright, were sunken in dark sockets. Her white hair was matted and dirty. But what broke my soul into 1,000 pieces was what she had in her hands. She was clutching today's newspaper tightly. She hugged it against her chest as if it were a shield. Seeing me, she did not recognize me. Her mind was broken by hunger and abuse. I have the newspaper, Michael, she whispered with a voice that sounded like dry leaves dragged by the wind. Look, it is today's. I already posed for the photo. I smiled like you told me, please. Give me the soup. I'm hungry. Do not hit me. I already smiled. I froze. Reality hit me with the force of a train. The proof of life. Those photos they sent me every month, where she appeared smiling with the newspaper in her hand, were not to show me she was okay. They were torture. They conditioned her like a circus dog. Hold the newspaper, smile, and we feed you. All so that I would continue sending the $2,000 monthly for her medicines. $2,000. With that money, they could have had her in a palace, and they had her sleeping on her own waist. My God, a moan escaped me. My God, what have they done? My legs failed, and I fell to my knees on the dirty ground next to the mattress. I did not care about the mud. I did not care about the smell of ammonia and sickness. Mom, I'm not Michael, I said, tears flowing from my eyes without control, burning my cheeks. I am Robert, your son, the one who left. She blinked, confused. She raised a skeletal and trembling hand to touch my face. Her fingers were cold as ice. Robert? She murmured as if she were waking up from a dream. My boy? They told me you died. Michael said you fell from a building. No, Mom. I am alive. I am here. She began to cry, a silent and painful cry. Forgive me, son. Forgive me for being like this. Look how dirty I am. I did not want you to see me like this. I am so ashamed. No, I shouted, hitting the ground with my fist. You have nothing to be ashamed of. The shame is mine. I threw myself over her and hugged her. I hugged her with all my strength, trying to transfer my warmth, my life to her. She was so light. She weighed the same as a bird. I felt her ribs through the dirty clothes. It was in that moment that I broke down. The great Mr. Robert Sterling, the tycoon from Texas, the man of steel, broke. I cried like a child. I cried from guilt. I built this. I sobbed against her shoulder. I sent them the money. I paid for this wall that locks you in. I paid for the food they deny you. I created these monsters, Mom. I thought I was giving them a good life, and I gave them the tools to torture you. I felt like the most miserable man in the world. What good were my millions? What good were my 50 trucks and my government contracts? I was not here to protect her. I left her alone at the mercy of wolves disguised as sheep. I am cold, son, she whispered. That phrase stopped my crying abruptly. The cold. She was cold. Was. And out there, Michael and Sarah were drinking wine, warm and safe, spending my money. I took off my denim jacket, even though it was damp, and covered her. But it was not enough. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand. Enough crying. The time for tears was over. Now began the time for blood. I stood up. The change was physical. My back straightened, ignoring the pain of the broken rib. My breathing became slow and deep. I looked at my mother one last time with tenderness. I kissed her sweaty forehead. Rest a moment more, Mom. I'm going to get you out of here. And I swear by my father's memory that you will never feel cold again. I bent down and removed the false sole of my right boot. There, wrapped in plastic, was my emergency satellite phone and a black credit card with no limits. I turned on the phone. The screen glowed in the darkness of the chicken coop. I dialed a number. Just one. They answered on the first ring. "Oh, I'm Sterling." The voice of Reynolds, my head of security and right-hand man in Texas, sounded crisp. "We lost your GPS signal for 3 hours. We were about to activate the search protocol. Are you okay?" "No, Reynolds, I am not okay," I said. My voice was no longer that of the old gardener. It was the voice of the CEO who fired 100 people without blinking if they failed. "Listen to me closely. I want Team Alpha here, now." "Team Alpha, sir, is it a risk situation?" "It is a war situation," I replied, looking toward the lit-up mansion. "Bring the armored SUVs. Bring the full medical team. I need an intensive care ambulance. And bring the lawyer, Mr. Henderson, and the private investigators." "Sir, we are at the hotel, 20 minutes away." "But what is happening?" "What is happening, Reynolds, is that I am going to demolish a house, and I am going to put 2 people in jail for the rest of their miserable lives. Enter through the back door. Break the lock if necessary. You have 15 minutes. I hung up. I stayed there in the dark, listening to the rain hit the tin sheet. I no longer felt pain. I only felt absolute clarity. I looked at my hands. Those calloused hands I was so proud of. I always thought my hands were to build, to plant, to give life. Today, for the first time in 20 years, my hands were going to destroy. I took off the old flannel shirt I wore underneath, remaining in an undershirt despite the cold, and used it to wipe my mother's face. "They are coming, Mom," I whispered to her. "The carriages are coming. Tonight, you are going to sleep between silk sheets." In the distance, I heard the sound of sirens and powerful engines approaching. My men, my army. Michael wanted to play the powerful man. Poor devil. He does not know he just woke up the owner of the board. 30 minutes later, the scene had changed radically. The chicken coop was illuminated by the tactical lights of my security men. My mother had already been moved to the private ambulance, hooked up to an IV, wrapped in thermal blankets, attended by 2 specialist doctors. I was sitting in the back of one of the armored SUVs, parked in the dark alley. I was no longer wearing the beggar's clothes. I had washed my face and hands with wet wipes, and I had put on an impeccable black suit that Reynolds always kept for me, along with my Patek Philippe watch. In front of me was Mr. Henderson, my lawyer in Mexico, and the private detective I had hired weeks ago but hadn't listened to until today. "You were right, Mr. Sterling," said the detective, handing me a blue folder. "I'm very sorry." I opened the folder. The car's reading light illuminated the documents that sealed my children's fate. "How did they do it?" I asked, turning the pages coldly. "It was 5 years ago," explained the lawyer. "Michael filed a presumption of death lawsuit. He bribed a local judge and a coroner to certify that you had disappeared at the border and that your death was highly probable. With that, they obtained the death certificate. And the insurance? That is where the federal crime is, sir," pointed out the detective. "You had an old life insurance policy here from when you worked in construction. Small, but with accumulated interest. They collected $200,000. But that is not all. They forged your signature to mortgage the house 3 times. 3 times? I clenched my jaw. That house is worth millions. Where is the money? Spent, sir. Cars, trips, parties, jewelry, and Michael's gambling debts. They are technically bankrupt. They only keep up appearances. They live off the money you send month to month and illegal loans. In fact, this charity party is a scam. The money they raise today is not going to any nursing home. It goes straight to pay some Colombian loan sharks who have threatened Michael. I slammed the folder shut. It was perfect. They were not just ungrateful. They were criminals. They were con artists. And they were desperate. What is the legal situation? I asked. We have everything to put them in jail tonight, said Henderson, adjusting his glasses. Fraud, forgery of official documents, elder abuse, criminal negligence. If you give the order, the police enter right now. I looked through the tinted window toward the mansion. I saw the shadows of the guests dancing. I saw Michael laughing, probably thinking he had gotten rid of the crazy old man. No, I said softly. The police will wait. Sir? The lawyer seemed confused. They are dangerous. I do not want the police to take them out. Discreetly. I want the whole world to see it. I want their partners, their rich friends, their high society girlfriends. I want everyone to see who they really are. I adjusted the knot of my tie. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. The man looking back at me had hard eyes, cold as the steel of a skyscraper. The loving father had died in that chicken coop. Now only the boss remained. "Reynolds!" I ordered over the radio. "Prepare the team. We are going in through the front door, and make sure to connect the video feed from the chicken coop to the giant screens in the party hall." "Understood, sir. Are we ready?" "Yes, it is time for the dead to speak." The convoy of black trucks started their engines. The roar of the V8 engines broke the silence of the night, drowning out the violin music coming from the house. The party was about to end, and the final judgment was about to begin. The rain had stopped hitting hard, turning into a cold and persistent drizzle that fogged up the windows of the armored truck. We were parked in the darkness of the service alley, invisible to the world, but with our eyes on every corner of the mansion. From the back seat, lined with the highest quality leather, I observed the high-definition screens my technicians had deployed in front of me. Reynolds and his team had hacked the house's security system in less than 10 minutes. "We have full visual, Mr. Sterling," informed Reynolds, adjusting his earpiece. "Main hall, kitchen, hallways, and entrance. The audio is crisp," I nodded, not taking my eyes off the central screen. What I saw churned my stomach more than the smell of the chicken coop. My house, the one I built brick by brick with the dream of watching my grandchildren grow, had turned into a cheap theater stage. The main hall was decorated with obscene opulence, floral arrangements of white lilies. My favorites, what damn irony, covered every corner, surely costing thousands of dollars each. Waiters with white gloves circulated with silver trays, serving caviar and French champagne to the cream of local society. And in the center of it all, on a small stage lit with dim lights to create an atmosphere of elegant mourning, was Michael, my son, my executioner. He was wearing a tuxedo that looked painted on him, custom-made. He held the microphone with that snake charmer ease he always had, that rehearsed smile he used to ask me for money when he was a teenager. Next to him, on a projection screen inside the hall, flashed photos of me, photos from when I was young, blurry photos I had sent them from Texas, all with a digital black frame. He turned up the volume of the ambient audio. His voice filled the truck cabin. "Friends, family, distinguished partners," said Michael, pausing dramatically, lowering his head as if the pain were unbearable. "Thank you. Thank you for being here on this difficult night for us. 5 years. It is easy to say, but it has been 5 years of darkness, without the light that was my father, Robert Sterling." The people murmured with sympathy. I saw society ladies drying their eyes with lace handkerchiefs. Hypocrite! I growled, clenching my fists until my knuckles turned white. Damn scoundrel! My father, continued Michael, looking toward the ceiling, looking for a heaven that would surely spit in his face. He was a man of sacrifice, a martyr. He died working in the United States, falling from a scaffold while building the future of this family. But his last wish, his last will whispered before that tragic accident, was to take care of my dear grandmother, Grandma Rose. I felt bitter bile in my throat. The cynicism was absolute. He used my supposed death in the name of my tortured mother to line his pockets. As many know, he lied with astonishing ease. Grandma Rose's health is delicate. To honor my father, we sent her to the exclusive residence, L'Avenir, in the Swiss Alps. It is an experimental treatment for her dementia. It is expensive, terribly expensive. But the Sterling family does not skimp on expenses when it comes to love. Love? I whispered. You have her sleeping on her own feces, you animal. That is why Michael raised a glass, and the light of the chandeliers reflected in the crystal. Tonight's collection is vital. These generous checks you have brought are not for us. They will go entirely to the Robert Sterling Foundation to maintain Grandma's treatment and build a new wing in that hospital to help other destitute elderly people. The crowd erupted in applause. I saw several businessmen taking out their checkbooks and gold pens. They were about to donate thousands of dollars to a pyramid scheme. Money that, according to my detective's report, Michael would use tomorrow to pay the Colombian loan sharks who threatened to break his legs for his gambling debts. I looked at Sarah, sitting in the front row. She was crying. But she was not crying for me. She was crying because she knew the lie was unsustainable. She was crying out of fear. Or maybe she was crying because she was as good an actress as her brother. Sir! Reynolds' voice snapped me out of my trance of rage. The medical team has finished stabilizing Grandma Rose. She is ready. I turned my head. The back door of the ambulance was open. My private doctors had performed a miracle in an hour. My mother no longer looked like a corpse. They had bathed her, combed her white hair, and put her in a navy blue silk dress we had bought in an emergency. She was sitting in a state-of-the-art electric wheelchair. She still looked fragile, terribly thin, and her eyes were still lost. But she was no longer shivering from the cold. I got out of the truck. The rain had ceased, leaving the air clean and cold. I adjusted the jacket of my Armani suit. I was no longer the gardener. I was no longer the pleading father. I approached my mother and knelt in front of her, taking her bony hands between mine. Mom, I told her softly, we are going into a party. There will be a lot of people and a lot of noise. But I want you to know one thing. You are the queen of this night. No one is going to hurt you. I am your shield. She looked at me. For a second, the fog of dementia and trauma seemed to clear. She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. Are we going to see Michael? She asked with a trembling voice. I am scared, son. If I do not smile, he does not feed me. That phrase was the final fuel I needed. The last drop of mercy I could have for my children evaporated. In that instant, I stood up, feeling 10 feet tall. Do not be afraid, Mom. Michael will never give you orders again. Today, Michael is going to learn who the real owner of the house is. I looked at Reynolds. Are the men in position? Perimeter secured. Entrances blocked. No one leaves without your permission, Mr. Sterling. Good. I smoothed my tie. Cut the power. Let's give my son the scare of his life. Inside the mansion, the party was at its peak. Michael was coming down from the stage, receiving pats on the back and envelopes with checks. He felt untouchable. He felt like God. 3, 2, 1 now, ordered Reynolds over the radio. Click! The darkness was total and absolute. The crystal chandeliers went out. The garden lights died. The violin music stopped with a discordant screech. A collective scream of surprise and fear ran through the hall. The sound of glasses falling to the floor could be heard. What is going on? I heard Michael's voice shrill with panic through the emergency speakers. A blackout! Security! Check the generators! We cannot be in the dark. Calm down, everyone! Shouted Sarah. It must be a fuse. That was my moment. The triumphant entrance of the dead man. The massive double oak doors of the main entrance, the ones I carved myself 20 years ago, opened wide with a solemn crash, pushed by my guards. The night wind entered the hall, chilling the guests. Lights! I ordered through my lapel microphone. Suddenly a single spotlight, a high-power tactical reflector that my technicians had installed in the lobby, turned on. A beam of white light, blinding and divine, cut through the darkness and pointed directly toward the entrance. And there I was, Mr. Robert Sterling. Not the dirty and pathetic beggar they had kicked out hours earlier, but the patriarch. The impeccable black suit absorbed the light. My Italian leather shoes shone like mirrors on the marble. My posture was upright, defiant, radiating a power that is only obtained by surviving hell. And pushing the wheelchair was my mother, the supposed patient in Switzerland, wrapped in dignity. The silence that fell over the room was sepulchral. 300 people held their breath at the same time. You could hear the heartbeat of hearts. I moved forward. Clack! 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 The sound of my steps resonated in the lobby like hammer blows on a coffin. My bodyguards, 6 ex-military men armed and dressed in tactical black, formed a wedge around me, advancing with military precision, pushing the guests to the sides as if they were the Red Sea, parting before Moses. Michael, from the foot of the stage, brought his hand to his eyes to protect himself from the spotlight. "Who is it?" he asked, with a trembling voice, almost a squeal. "What kind of joke is this?" I kept advancing until I reached the center of the dance floor, right under the large extinguished chandelier. I looked up. Michael finally saw me. He saw me for real. His eyes widened so much I thought they would pop out of their sockets. His face paled until it turned the color of ash. The glass of champagne he was holding slipped from his sweaty fingers. It smashed against the floor, breaking into 1,000 pieces. But the noise was insignificant compared to the roar of his reality, shattering into pieces. Sarah, who was next to him, let out a choked scream and brought her hands to her mouth. Her legs failed and she had to hold on to a table. "Dad!" she screamed. It was not a greeting. It was a scream of pure terror, as if she saw a corpse rising from its grave. The guests started to murmur. The rumor grew like an unstoppable wave. "Dad?" she said. "Dad? Is that not Robert? The one in the funeral photo? But he is dead. We have been praying for him for 5 years. I went to the Mass. It is a ghost. It is a miracle." I stopped 15 feet from my children. I let go of the wheelchair and let my mother be visible to everyone. I crossed my hands behind my back and looked at Michael. I looked at him with the same cold intensity with which I looked at the foundation of a defective building before ordering its demolition. "Good evening," I said. My voice, projected with the strength of my lungs, tanned on the construction site, filled the room without the need for a microphone. "I am sorry I'm late for my own funeral. Traffic from the beyond was terrible, and the service in hell leaves much to be desired. Panic makes people do stupid things. Michael was no exception. Instead of kneeling, instead of asking for forgiveness, his criminal survival instinct activated. 'He is an imposter!' he shouted, recovering the microphone, although his hand was shaking violently. 'Do not be fooled. It is the bum from this afternoon. That crazy old man who came to beg for charity, he has disguised himself.' The people, confused, began to doubt. They looked at my photo on the screen and then at me. 20 years change a man, but the eyes are the same. 'Security!' howled Michael in desperation. 'Get this imposter out of my house. He is usurping my dead father's identity. Call the police.' His 2 security guerrillas, the same ones who had beaten me in the mud, tried to push through the crowd to get to me. They looked big and threatening, but this time I was not alone. 'Halt!' thundered Reynolds. Before Michael's guerrillas could take 2 more steps, My team intercepted them. It was fast, brutal, and efficient. A sharp blow to the solar plexus, an arm lock, and Michael's 2 guards were kissing the floor, handcuffed with plastic zip ties in a matter of seconds. Some guests screamed, "Nobody move!" boomed Reynolds, showing his private security badge. "This property is under the control of Corporate Security RS Holdings. Sit down and remain silent." The dominion of the room changed hands in an instant. It was no longer Michael's party. It was my trial. I walked up the stage stairs with unhurried calm. Michael backed away, tripping over sound cables until he crashed against the projection screen. I reached him. I ripped the microphone from his sweaty hand. I looked at him closely. He smelled of fear. He smelled of urine. "An imposter, Michael?" I said into the microphone, my voice resonating in every corner of the house. "Look at me closely. Look me in the eyes. Am I an imposter, or am I the man who taught you to walk? Am I the man who paid for that architecture degree that you never finished because you preferred to go partying?" Michael opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He was paralyzed. I turned to the audience. I saw familiar faces. Mr. Ernest, my old neighbor. Mrs. Clara, the owner of the bakery. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, maintaining a composure of steel, "I apologize for the show. I know you came to honor the memory of a hard-working man, but I have bad news for you. That man is not dead. That man is me, Robert Sterling." "It is impossible," shouted an old partner from the back, pale. "We saw the death certificate. It is an official document." "I know," I nodded with sarcasm. I was also very surprised to find out today that I had passed away 5 years ago. It seems my children were in a big hurry to inherit, such a hurry that they decided to bury me alive legally, while I kept sending money month after month to maintain their luxuries. "He is lying!" shrieked Sarah from below, trying to save the unsalvageable, even though tears were running down her makeup. "He is crazy. He is an actor hired by our enemies. Our father died in Texas. We loved him." I started to laugh, a dry laugh without joy that froze the blood of those present. "Love? You talk about love, my daughter? And my mother? Do you love her too?" I pointed toward the wheelchair. Grandma Rose, small and fragile like a wounded bird, looked at the crowd with eyes wide from the lights. "You just heard Michael ask for money for Grandma Rose, who is supposedly in a luxury clinic in Switzerland." I paused, letting the weight of my words fall. "Well, allow me to introduce you to the real Grandma Rose." I stepped down from the stage and approached my mother. I put the microphone near her mouth. "Mom," I told her softly, "tell them where you have been. Tell them where you slept last night." My mother, overwhelmed, sought my hand. In the chicken coop, her voice, amplified by the concert speakers, sounded ghostly, breaking everyone's heart. In the little house for the chickens, I was cold. "Michael, I already smiled with the newspaper. Can you give me the soup now? Please, I'm very hungry." A collective scream of horror erupted in the room. "The chicken coop?" asked a bejeweled lady, bringing her hands to her chest. "What is she saying? Good God!" Michael tried to get off the stage to flee through the kitchen, but Reynolds planted himself in front of him like a concrete wall. "We are not finished, son," I said, getting back on the stage. "People need to see what they invested their money in. They need to see the truth." I signaled my technician in the sound booth. "Play the video." The giant screen behind the stage, which until a moment ago showed photos of me with black ribbons and celestial music, flickered. The image changed abruptly. It was no longer an elegant presentation. It was a video recorded just 2 hours ago with night vision and cell phone light. Shaky, raw, real. On the screen appeared the interior of the shed. You could see the filth encrusted on the walls, the chicken feces on the dirt floor, the cobwebs, the rotten and urine-stained mattress. And there, in high definition for 300 people to see, was Grandma Rose, dirty, skin and bones, crawling to reach a plate of rice that looked like it had mold on it. The audio of the video rumbled in the room with painful clarity. "Please, I'm hungry. Do not hit me, Sarah. I do not smell bad any more. Let me inside the house. It is cold." In the party hall, the silence broke. The atmosphere changed from confusion to fury in a second. People started shouting. Some were crying. Others covered their mouths, not to vomit. "Monsters!" shouted someone from the back. "Animals, scum!" bellowed another man, throwing his glass to the floor. "Look!" I screamed, my voice charged with biblical anger, pointing at the screen. "This is what you were funding? This is the 5-star nursing home. My children, my own blood, had my mother living like a beast while they drank champagne bought with her medicine money." I turned toward Michael and Sarah. They were cornered against the stage wall. Sarah was sobbing hysterically, curled into a ball. Michael looked everywhere, looking for an exit that did not exist. "Shame!" I shouted at them, spitting the word in their faces. "That is what you are. A disgrace. I worked from sun up to sundown. I broke my back. I endured humiliations in a foreign country. I ate trash so that you could be princes. And you turned into demons. Turn it off!" shrieked Sarah, covering her ears. "Turn that off! It is a lie! No!" I responded, implacable. Look closely at your work, because that is the only inheritance you are going to take away today, the memory of your own cruelty." The video ended with a close-up of my mother's hands, holding today's newspaper, trembling. The date was visible, the irrefutable proof that everything had happened today, that while they dressed up in gala attire, she was dying of cold 100 yards away. The guests began to move away from Michael and Sarah as if they had a contagious disease. The circle opened, leaving them alone, exposed, morally naked before the society they wanted to impress so much. Their friends looked at them with absolute disgust. The emotional blow had been devastating. They were socially destroyed. But I am not a man who leaves a job halfway done. I needed the final blow, the one that would ensure they could never get up again. I made a sign, and Mr. Henderson got on the stage. His presence, with his gray suit and leather briefcase, brought a deadly seriousness to the scene. "Perhaps you think this is just a family tragedy," I said, recovering the cold calm of a businessman. "But no, this is a crime, and I have the evidence to bury them." Henderson opened the briefcase and took out a sealed document. "I am the legal representative of Mr. Robert Sterling," announced the lawyer with a professional and dry voice. "What I have in my hand is death certificate number 4058, issued 5 years ago in this county. It certifies the death of Robert Sterling by unspecified work accident." The lawyer held up another document, showing it to the audience, and this is the collection of the life insurance policy from National Insurance. $200,000, paid to the beneficiaries, Michael and Sarah Sterling. The money was deposited and spent in its entirety in less than 6 months. The crowd gasped. The fraud was massive. Not only were they cruel, they were thieves. "Michael," I said, approaching him until our noses almost touched, "do you know what that is called in the penal code? It is called procedural fraud, forgery of official documents, identity theft, and aggravated fraud, added to elder abuse and criminal negligence. That adds up, according to my lawyers, to about 20 years in prison, without bail." Michael tried to speak, but only pathetic babbles came out. "Dad, I needed the money. I had debts. They were going to kill me." "Who?" "Your Colombian loan sharks." I laughed without mirth. "Ah, yes. I have news for you. I also bought your debt this morning, Michael. That $5 million debt you have for your vices. Now you owe it to me. I am your father, your victim, and your creditor." Sarah, hearing the word jail, broke completely. Her loyalty to her brother crumbled like a house of cards. She threw herself at my feet, grabbing my pants, staining my suit with her tears and snot. Daddy, forgive me," she cried hysterically. "It was Michael's idea, I swear to you. He forced me. He forged your signature. I just wanted to take care of Grandma, but he would not let me. He hit me if I gave her food. Do not put me in jail. I am your daughter, your princess." Michael looked at his sister with pure hatred. The betrayal was instant. "Damn liar!" Michael shouted, throwing himself on her. "You spent half of it on your trips to Paris. You were the one who said the old woman smelled bad. They started fighting right there. My son grabbed my daughter by the hair. They insulted each other, they spat on each other, they blamed each other. They rolled on the floor in a tangle of expensive dresses and torn tuxedos, hitting each other like rabid animals cornered. It was pathetic. It was the saddest and most degrading spectacle I had seen in my life. My children, my pride, reduced to this. Rats fighting on a sinking ship, I signaled Reynolds. Separate them. They disgust me. The guards lifted them up in the air. They were disheveled, crying, humiliated. Michael had a split lip from a scratch by Sarah. Sarah had lost a shoe and part of her hair extensions. The red and blue lights of the police cars start to reflect in the windows of the hall. The police had arrived. "You have two options," I said, and my voice resonated like a judge's gavel handing down a sentence. "And you have exactly 1 minute to decide before I let the officers in." I took out 2 folders that Reynolds handed me. I threw them on the floor in front of them. Option A. I hand this evidence to the police. You go to jail tonight. With the charges I have and the money I have to pay prosecutors, I guarantee you will rot in a cell shared with murderers and rapists for the next 15 years. And believe me, rich kids who scam their parents do not do very well in there. Michael and Sarah trembled. The terror in their eyes was absolute. The silence in the room was such that you could hear the sound of the rain outside. Option B, I continued, pointing to the second folder. You sign this. It is a voluntary renunciation of assets and an acknowledgement of debt. You give me back the house, the cars, the accounts, everything. You renounce any present or future inheritance, and you leave. Right now. And the debt? Asked Michael with the thread of a voice looking at the papers. The debt remains pending. You will work to pay me back, but you will live in freedom. A poor, dirty, and difficult freedom. The same freedom with which I arrived in the United States without a penny. I looked at my Patek Philippe watch. Time is running. Tick, tock. 30 seconds. The police are ringing the bell. The guests watched, holding their breath. No one intervened. No one defended them. Everyone knew that justice, although cruel, was being served. It was a public execution, and no one wanted to be on the side of the condemned. Michael looked toward the door. He looked at his sister. He looked at the mansion that was no longer his. He looked at his life of lies crumbling. "Give me the pen," he said, defeated, lowering his head. "On your knees," I ordered. Michael looked up, surprised. "What?" "If you are going to sign, you will do it on your knees. Not before me. Before her." I pointed to my mother. "Ask your grandmother for forgiveness while you sign your sentence." Michael and Sarah, with their pride shattered, dragged themselves until they were kneeling in front of Grandma Rose's wheelchair. She did not look at them. She was busy eating a piece of bread that one of my nurses had given her, oblivious to the destruction of her grandchildren. They signed the papers on the cold marble floor, with trembling hands, staining the sheets with their tears. When they finished, I picked up the documents and handed them to Henderson. "It is done," said the lawyer. "Legally, they are destitute." "Reynolds," I said, putting the gold pen in my pocket, "get them out." "Where to, sir?" "To the street, to the rain, and give them their severance." Reynolds took out a black plastic bag and threw it on the floor in front of them. Inside were 2 orange municipal street sweeper uniforms, dirty and used, and a $40 bill. "Welcome to the real world, my children. Now you will know what it is to work from sun up to sundown." The silence in the hall was so dense you could cut it with a knife. Michael and Sarah had just signed their social and financial death sentence. They were kneeling on the cold marble, with the ink from the pens still fresh on the documents that Mr. Henderson guarded jealously in his briefcase. But signing was not enough. I needed them to feel the weight of reality. I needed to rip off the rich kid skin I had woven for them myself with my money. "Get up," I ordered. They stood up, wobbling. Michael had a lost look, like a knocked-out boxer who does not know what round it is. Sarah was sobbing, hugging herself, ruining her designer dress. "Reynolds," I said, pointing to the black plastic bag lying on the floor. "Open it." My head of security opened the bag and took out the contents. 2 municipal street sweeper uniforms. Those bright orange ones with reflective stripes, made of rough, synthetic fabric. They were used. They smelled of stale sweat. Trash and street. He also took out 2 pairs of old and worn work boots. "What? What is this?" asked Sarah, looking at the clothes with horror, as if it were radioactive material. "It is your new dress code," I said coldly. "You arrived at this party disguised as princes, paid for with the money I stole from my own old age and my mother's health. But those costumes no longer belong to you." I took a step forward, invading their personal space. "That tuxedo, Michael, that Rolex watch, those patent leather shoes, all of that is the property of Robert Sterling. And since you just signed the renunciation of all assets, that means you have to take it off. Now, here?" Michael looked at the guests, his friends, his ex-partners, in front of everyone. "Dad, please, have a little mercy. Do not humiliate us like this." "Mercy?" I laughed, and the sound bounced off the walls. "Did you have mercy when you took your grandmother's clothes and dressed her in dirty rags? Did you have mercy when you left me on the street in the rain? Mercy is a luxury you cannot afford." I looked at my guards, helped them. It was a grotesque and necessary scene. My men were not violent, but they were firm. Michael, trembling with shame, took off his jacket, his silk tie, his spotless white shirt. He stood in his underwear in the middle of his own party. His body, soft and pampered, contrasted with the harshness of the situation. Sarah screamed and kicked, while one of the female guards from my team forced her to take off her evening gown and jewels. "Not my earrings. They are diamonds," she squealed. I corrected, "in the bag." When they finished, both were dressed in the Orange Street sweeper uniforms. They were too big, shapeless. The old boots replaced the high heels and Italian shoes. They no longer looked like heirs to an empire. They looked like what they really were inside. Trash. "Look at yourselves," I told them, pointing to a large gold mirror on the wall. "That is your true skin. Get used to it, because starting tomorrow, that clothes will be the only honest way you will have to earn your bread." Michael looked at himself in the mirror and broke down crying. He was not crying out of regret. He was crying because his image, his personal God, had been destroyed. "Here." I threw a $50 bill at their feet. "For the bus. I do not want you to say your father gave you nothing to start. Get them out," I ordered. Reynolds and 2 guards grabbed them by the arms, not gently, but like you grab intruders. They started walking toward the main door. The crowd of guests who had watched everything in stunned silence parted. No one extended a hand. No one said, "Poor Michael." No one approached Sarah. Their friends backed away, raising their glasses so as not to be touched by the dirty uniforms. They looked at them with a mixture of morbid fascination and absolute disgust. They were lepers. They were social corpses. "Mr. Ernest!" shouted Michael, seeking the gaze of an old partner of mine. "Help me. Tell my father he is crazy." Mr. Ernest, a 70-year-old man with a white mustache, adjusted his glasses and looked at Michael with contempt. "Your father is the sanest man I know, boy, and if I were him, you would already be in jail. Do not speak to me." They reached the main door. The large oak leaves were open, showing the rainy night. The cold wind blew inside. "No, please," begged Sarah, holding on to the door frame. "It is cold. We have nowhere to go." "Dad!" I approached them slowly, pushing my mother's wheelchair to the threshold. "Cold?" I asked softly. "Are you worried about the cold, Sarah?" I pointed toward the darkness of the garden, toward the direction where the chicken coop was. "Your grandmother lived with that cold for 3 winters. 3. And you slept in a feather bed with heating." I leaned toward them. My eyes locked onto theirs for the last time. I hope the cold teaches you what I could not teach you. With love. Gratitude. I made a dry sign to the guards. To the street. With a final shove, Michael and Sarah were thrown out of the mansion. They tripped on the entrance steps and fell, rolling onto the wet sidewalk, right in the same spot where I had fallen hours earlier. The mud stained their orange uniforms. The rain soaked their hair. They got up, banging on the door, shouting, crying, "Open up! Dad! Sorry!" I looked at Reynolds. "Close it, and lock it." The guards pushed the heavy doors. The sound of wood and metal closing was definitive. Boom! Then the metallic sound of the deadbolt turning. Click! The noise of their screams was muffled, remaining outside, far away, in another world. In my world, inside, silence returned. A clean silence. I turned toward the guests who were still paralyzed. "The party is over," I said with a calm voice. "You may leave. And please take your checks with you. My mother does not need your charity. She has me." Little by little the hall emptied. The guests left hurriedly, murmuring, avoiding looking me in the eyes, ashamed to have been part of Michael's charade. The waiters picked up broken glasses. The security staff took down the lights. I remained alone in the grand lobby with my mother. The house, which before seemed like a palace to me, now felt huge, empty and strange. The walls smelled of expensive perfume and betrayal. I knelt next to Grandma Rose's wheelchair. She was drowsy, exhausted by the emotions of the night. "Mom," I whispered, caressing her hand. "They are gone. It is over." She opened her eyes. She looked at me, and for the first time all night, she smiled at me with a lucidity that broke my soul. "Robert," she said. "That bad man, the one shouting, was that Michael?" I felt a lump in my throat. I did not want to lie to her, but I did not want to hurt her more either. "Yes, Mom, it was Michael. He turned bad," she whispered, and a solitary tear rolled down her wrinkled cheek. "When you were a boy, you told me you were going to build a house so we would all be happy. But this house ate the good children and spit out monsters." Her words were more painful than any blow. She was right. The money, the ambition, the distance, all of that had rotted the roots of my family. I had watered the tree with dollars, but I had not cared for it with presents. "You are right, Mom," I kissed her forehead. "This house is cursed, but do not worry. We are not staying here." "I am hungry, son," she said, changing the subject like old people and children do. "Come, let's go to the kitchen." I took her to the mansion's industrial kitchen. It was full of trays of gourmet food that had not been touched. Salmon, caviar, duck. But I looked in the pantry and found a can of noodle soup and some bread. I heated the soup myself, in a small pot. We sat at the small service table, far from the luxury of the main dining room. I fed spoonfuls of hot soup to my mother, blowing on it so she wouldn't burn herself. She ate greedily, closing her eyes with pleasure. "It is tasty," she said, "better than the food of kings." I watched her eat. That moment, feeding my rescued mother, was worth more than all the millions I had in the bank. I cried. But this time it was not a cry of despair. It was a cry of relief, a cry of cleansing. The storm had passed. I had lost my children, yes, but I had recovered my soul. 1 week later, I signed the last document on the mahogany desk. "Done," I said, putting down the pen. "The house is yours." The buyer, a businessman from the capital, smiled and shook my hand. "It is a magnificent property, Mr. Sterling. Are you sure you want to sell it with all the furniture inside?" "Everything," I replied sharply. "I do not want a chair or a painting or a spoon. Burn it all if you want. I'm only taking my clothes and my mother." I left the notary's office, and the street air tasted like freedom. Reynolds was waiting for me next to the truck. "Where to, boss?" "To the penthouse?" "Yes, Reynolds. Home." Yeah, I had bought a penthouse in the most modern part of the city, a place with lots of light, big windows and no dark corners, no chicken coops. I had hired 3 specialized nurses to take care of Grandma Rose 24 hours a day. She was already there, watching soap operas on a giant television, eating Jell-O and gaining weight little by little. As the truck moved through traffic, the lawyer Henderson called me. "Mr. Sterling, I have news about the subjects. Tell me," I said, looking out the window. "The situation is precarious. Michael's creditors took the cars and jewelry they had left before they could sell them. Now they are living in a tenement in the industrial zone, a 12 by 12 room. Are they working?" "Yes, sir. Michael got a job as a loader at the supply center. Sarah is cleaning tables at a late-night taco place. We have been watching them. They look bad. Very bad. Do you want us to intervene? Send them something." I thought of Michael carrying sacks of onions at 4 in the morning. I thought of his soft hands filling with calluses. I thought of Sarah, the princess, cleaning grease off tables. I remembered my own beginnings, the back pain, the hunger. "No," I replied, "leave them. They are learning the most important lesson of their lives. Honest work never killed anyone. What kills is lying. If they survive this, maybe, just maybe, one day they will be decent people." "Understood, sir." I hung up. I did not feel pity. I felt a strange peace. Divine justice was operating. I did not need to do anything else. 1 month later, rain was falling softly over the city, one of those gray rains that invite melancholy. I was in the back seat of my Maybach, returning from a medical checkup with my mother. She was asleep next to me, breathing calmly with a wool blanket over her legs. "Sir," said the driver, slowing down, "there's a lot of traffic ahead. It looks like there is an altercation on the sidewalk." I looked out the tinted window. We were crossing one of the busiest and dirtiest avenues in the city. On the sidewalk, under the awning of a cheap liquor store, were 2 figures fighting. It was them. Although only a month had passed, they seemed to have aged 10 years. Michael was skinny with a grown-out and dirty beard, wearing a gray T-shirt full of stains. Sarah had dull hair, tied in a messy ponytail, and wore an apron dirty with grease. They were struggling over a bottle of cheap tequila. "It is mine!" shouted Michael, his voice hoarse. "I paid for it with my tips." "Give me a drink, you selfish bastard!" shrieked Sarah, pushing him. My feet hurt. People passed by them, ignoring them, looking at them with the same contempt with which they had looked at me that day at the mansion. They were invisible. They were part of the landscape of urban misery. I saw Michael raise his hand to hit his sister. I saw Sarah return the blow with rage. They were 2 cornered animals, devouring each other. Class, education, the family name, all had dissolved in the acid of poverty. The driver, recognizing them, tensed up. He looked at me through the rearview mirror. His eyes showed compassion and doubt. "Sir, it is them. Do you want us to stop? Do you want to roll down the window?" I looked at my mother asleep next to me, so peaceful, so far from that hell. Then I looked back at the street. Michael had tripped and fallen into a puddle. Sarah was laughing at him hysterically while drinking from the bottle. I felt a pang in my heart. It was the father instinct, that old muscle that refused to die. I wanted to get out, pick them up, clean them, tell them everything would be okay. But I remembered the chicken coop. I remembered my mother eating leftovers. I remembered Michael's laughter when they kicked me out to the street. I remembered the forged signature on the death certificate. That man in the puddle was not my son. He was my son's murderer. My son, the innocent boy I carried in my arms, had died a long time ago, devoured by the ambition of that stranger who was now dragging himself on the ground. I took a deep breath. The car's air conditioning smelled clean, like new leather. I pressed the button to raise the privacy curtain on the window, erasing the image of the street, erasing them. "No," I said, and my voice sounded firm without trembling. "Sir?" insisted the driver. "Keep driving, Reynolds. Do not stop." "But do you not want to see them? Do you not want to say something to them?" I settled into the seat and took my mother's hand. "I do not need to look. To me, my children have been dead since the day they buried me alive on a piece of paper." The car accelerated, moving away under the rain, leaving behind the ghosts, fighting over a bottle on the sidewalk. I did not look back. I never looked back. If this story captivated you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box to the left of the screen. Thanks for watching.